tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Homage to the Blessed One, the Worthy One, the Supremely Enlightened One. Dear meritorious devotees, you are joining in with Kalam friends, and today is a session that we're going to discuss about the four great elements, what the Buddha has taught us about these four great elements. First of all, we'll go for refuge to the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha, and then we'll observe the five precepts. Now, for those of you who are joining in for the sake of listening, learning, the newcomers, if they don't want to observe the precepts, it's okay. For those who observe the five precepts regularly, they can observe the five precepts, and all of you, after observing these five precepts, can listen to the Dhamma sermon. So we'll now go for refuge and observe the five precepts. With me, you can go for refuge for the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhan saranang gacchami. Dhamman saranang gacchami. Sangham saranang gacchami. Dutiyampi buddhan saranang gacchami. Dutiyampi dhamman saranang gacchami. Dutiyampi sangham saranang gacchami. Tatiyampi buddhan saranang gacchami. Tatiyampi dhamman saranang gacchami. Tatiyampi sangham saranang gacchami. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Now to go for refuge, repeat after me. I observe the precept of abstaining from killing beings. I observe the precept of abstaining from stealing. I observe the precept of abstaining from sexual misconduct. I observe the precept of abstaining from telling lies. I observe the precept of abstaining from taking intoxicating drinks and drugs. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Dear meritorious devotees, today we are going to talk about the four great elements. Now, if you have listened to our previous Dhamma sermon, you might have heard about two elements, two great elements. Now, what are these? Now, I'm going to tell you the classification of these four great elements. Then I will teach you their nature, and there is a simile that the Buddha has given us to identify or get to know it more better. And I will bring you that simile to you. First, we'll go into the classification. Now, the Buddha classified these four great elements. First one is the earth element, and the second one is the water element. The third one is the fire, and the fourth one is the air. Now, under the earth element, there are 19 parts, and under the water element, there are 12 parts. There are 12 parts under the water element. Now we discuss about these first two elements when it comes to the repulsiveness of the body. If you have listened to the previous sermon, I think now you have a sound knowledge of these, the first two elements, that is the earth element and the water element. When it comes to the teaching of the elements, we go beyond the repulsiveness of the body. Now, it doesn't mean that the repulsiveness of the body meditation is something that we should ignore. It is just that these meditations, all of these meditations, come under one topic, that is Kayanupassana. The meditation that we select, it depends on person to person. Now, the Buddha is not alive. Nowadays, we have the books, and we just have to give it a try and see which meditation suits us. So just by looking at the book and reading is not enough. We just have to give it a try. We just have to practice it for some time. Then we will get to know the repulsiveness of the body suits me, or practicing the elements and the four great elements, this meditation suits me. So coming back to the topic, the great elements, as the first one we have Patavi Dhatu. Now in Pali it's called Patavi Dhatu. And how many parts are there under the Patavi Dhatu? 19 are there. Now I will read them out for you. First one is the head hair. Then there's body hair, nails, teeth, skin, flesh, sinews, bones, bone marrow, kidneys, heart, liver, diaphragm, spleen, lungs, small intestines, large intestines, the contents of the stomach, we just can call it the stomach, feces. And the Buddha says a nice thing. Now listen to this carefully. He says, "Oh, whatever else eternally belonging to oneself that can be called solid, solidified, and cling to can be called as Patavi Dhatu, or the earth element." Then there's the water element. Now I told you earlier on there are 12 parts that come under the water element: bile, phlegm, pus, blood, sweat, fat, tears, grease, spittle, snot, oil of the joints, and urine. So these are the 12 parts that come under the water element. Now, again, he says that the thing that he said for the earth element, he says, or whatever else internally belonging to oneself is water, watery, and cling to, or clung to, can be called the water element. Now, we'll think about these two elements for a moment now. Do bees and butterflies come in search of honey? They come to our body in search of blood. That is because we have a repulsive body. That is the repulsiveness of the body. So we talked about these elements in our previous sermon. So moving on to the classification, now Buddha says about the fire element. The Buddha said that by which one is warmed, that by which one ages, that by which is consumed, that by which what is eaten, drunk, consumed, and tasted gets completely digested, can be called, or that thing, it comes under the fire element. Again, the Buddha says, or whatever else is eternal, or whatever else eternally belonging to oneself, whatever else is fiery and clung to, can be called the fire element. Now imagine you were on the top of the mountain Everest, wearing a shirt and a trouser. Nothing but that is the thing that you have on your body. So without proper gear and equipment and proper clothes to wear, on the top of the mountain, would you be able to survive? No, because the warmth would not be there. So you will die. To live, we need this fire element. That is why the Buddha said that by which one is warmed. So without this fire element, it is not possible for us to live. And moving on to the air elements, the final elements, the Buddha says air that goes upwards, that means the air that comes out through the mouth, and air that comes downwards, that means the air that comes out through the anus. Air in the belly, air in the bowels, air that goes through the limbs, and the in-breath and the out-breath. All of these elements of air come under the air element. And the Buddha said both the internal air element and the external air element are simply air element. That means that there is no difference. Now the body that we have consists of these four great elements, namely Patavi Dhatu, or the earth element, then there's Apo Dhatu, the water element, Tejo Dhatu, the fire element, Vayu Dhatu, the air element. If you take another person's body, the same thing, there's nothing different. Maybe the complexion, the texture, it's a bit different. When you look at a person might be white in complexion, in skin color, or black in skin color. But apart from that, if you examine it carefully, all the bodies that we have, human beings, they share one thing in common, and that is these four great elements. Now, this is the classification that the Buddha has given us to understand what these four great elements are. Then moving on to now, I told you I would tell you about their nature. Now, there are three parts when it comes to the nature of the four great elements. That is anicca, dukkha, and anatma. Anicca means that it is impermanent. Dukkha means that it belongs to suffering. Anatta means that there is no self, that you don't have the control over these four great elements. Now, when these four great elements are aging, dying, you can't command and say, hey, the earth element, stop it right there. Do not decay or do not age. You can't command like that and you can't stop it. It keeps on changing, it deteriorates, disintegrates. The Buddha said, now there's one word, the Buddha used that word to denote these four great elements, that is rupa. Once he said, rupatiti ko bhikkhave tasma rupanti vicchati. Since it disintegrates, deteriorates, it's called rupa. So see, even though how hard we are attached to these four great elements, in other words, to this body, we can't stop it disintegrating, deteriorating. It keeps on changing. And at the end of the life, we die and we go into another life. Now, the Buddha gave a simile for us to identify these rupa, or the four great elements. He said that the body that we have is like a lump of foam. Now, imagine there is a lump of foam. The nature of a lump of foam is that it disintegrates. Now, you can experience this if in the morning, if you take a pint of water and put some detergent into it, and you disturb the water, there you can see bubbles. There would be a lump of foam created. But in the evening, if you go back and check it out, there will be no foam whatsoever. You will see the water there. See, just like that, gradually, but for surely, this body that we have, it disintegrates, it deteriorates. So it's impermanent, and it belongs to dukkha, or suffering, and there is no self in it. Now, we will talk about the danger of having these four, the existence of the four elements. There is a sutta named Dhatu Sutta. In it, Buddha said, if someone is attached to these four great elements, namely the earth element, the water element, the fire element, and the air element, if someone is attached to these four great elements, the Buddha said, you can call it a contamination of the mind. A contamination of the mind. And there is another sutta named the Sara Sutta. In it, Buddha said, the place where these four great elements can be seen. In the Sara Sutta, the Buddha said, because of the existence of these four great elements, the samsara is seen. So the samsara is there because there's these elements are there. And the Buddha said in the same sutta, the Sara Sutta, if these four great elements are not there, then a samsara cannot be seen. And There's another nice sutta named Upada Sutta. In it, Buddha said, when there is the existence of these elements, there exists suffering. There exists illness, and there's aging, and there's death. So, if we can eradicate the attachment that we have towards these four great elements, then we can understand this Dhamma to the fullest. There's another beautiful sutta named Asivisopama Sutta. Buddha named these four great elements after four poisonous snakes. He said that it is as if we are having the body that we have. He said that it is as if we are having four poisonous snakes within us. Now he said in Asivisopama Sutta, we have to feed these snakes regularly. We have to give them something to drink regularly. We have to bathe them, to put them into the bed. But he said that these four snakes are not grateful, even though how hard you attend to them, they're not grateful. They strike you back. Just like that, these four great elements, they're not grateful. They strike you back. So you can understand this by thinking of the old age. When we grow old, these four great elements, they hurt us so hard that we become so stressful, and we end this life that we have in this human world in tears. We die and we go into another new destination. So these are the dangers that we have when it comes to the four great elements. Now, Buddha said, if we can become arahants, that means to follow the Eightfold Path and understand this Dhamma to the fullest, then we will have cut off craving, and we will have stripped off the fetters, and we will have destroyed the conceit I am, which is called Asmimana. We will put an end to suffering, and this end of suffering is called Nibbana. Now, going back to the beginning of this sutta, now I gave you the classification that the Buddha has given us in the sutta named Satipatthana, Mahasatipatthana Sutta. In it he said, just as though a skilled butcher or his apprentice had killed a cow and was seated at the crossroads with it cut into pieces, so too monks, a monk reflects upon this very body. Now, if you have been to a place like this, I'm sure you have seen this. Now, the parts of the body of a cow, the flesh is at one place, the bones are at one place, they have removed the skin and it's on another place, blood streaming out of the flesh. So just like that, the Buddha asked us to contemplate, think about this body that we have. Now, as I said earlier, if we manage to understand this Dhamma to the fullest, then we will have attained the supreme bliss of Nibbana in this very life. So to practice this Dhamma, that means the meditation on the four great elements, you need to know these parts by heart. You can learn these parts by heart, or if it is difficult for you, you can have the book and just read it out. You take one part and you think of the impermanence of that part, how it disintegrates, how it belongs to dukkha or suffering, and the way that it has no self. Then you can move to the other part. You can take the next part in and keep on practicing. So it is not necessary to learn these points by heart. If it is hard for you, you can have the book with you and use that book to help you out with the meditation. So we come to the end of this Dhamma sermon, and by the merit that we have gained by listening to this Dhamma sermon, we wish you would attain the supreme bliss of Nibbana in this Gautam Buddha's dispensation. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Namo Buddhaya, Namo